Hello everybody, thank you all for joining. This was again a historic day, but a very interesting day. We're not going to break it all down, and there's some weird things happening behind the scenes that you need to be aware of. Also, watch for certain things like slippage, and it is just a fascinating world to be alive. So thank you all for joining. Let's go. This is what I call day one of the Bitcoin spot ETF. I've been waiting 7 years. A lot of people have been waiting 10 or 11 years for this thing to happen, and it did happen. Crypto market cap right now is about 1.76 trillion. Volume, $139 billion. Okay, and that is 3 times the normal. Let me see. Bitcoin all over the place. Last time I checked, 46,300. One thing as well, my high-end target for the halving price of Bitcoin was 48,000. Bitcoin hit 49,000 today. So again, everything's going up faster and earlier than expected. So we'll see. But you know, the range, the volatility is making all the other cryptos look very, very stable. Bitcoin dominance, I think it's about 50.2%. And fear and greed still at 70.6%. And let's jump in. And now this is financial advice. Don't forget to subscribe. The best, fastest, most alpha on the internet, bar none. So it's all about the Cointucky Derby. I hope I said that right. Cointucky, Kentucky Derby, whatever. Who's going to win? That's what we're going to break down today. How much money flew in on the first day? How is that money processed? How does that impact Bitcoin price? You'll be very interested to learn a lot of this as well. We'll also talk about some other stuff down the line, like inflation and how the world is brought to its knees by a very unsuspecting group as well. But anyway, also supply crunch. And so who won this derby? So these are some of the players. IBIT, ARK, Fidelity, HODL. The tickers are very, very funny, but they're all over the place and they can be very confusing. And many systems that you look up these tickers, you find old tickers as well. But anyway, the big thing today is, did we break a record of first day inflows into an ETF? So this is the history. The previous record is about $2.1 billion. And we don't know exactly the numbers, but I did some preliminary calculations and I'll share them with you in a second. But I do think IBIT, or definitely the whole category of them all, should get near and above this record. But if you look at them in isolation, I'm not so sure. Now, BlackRock did say they would have $2 billion on the first day. Let's see as well if they were correct or not. And sometimes the precision with how people estimate stuff is quite remarkable as well. And remember, after the market closes is where it happens, and I'll also explain why that is too. Thank you so much, Invested. Let's go and look at what happened. So we did see that surge to 49,000. Spot ETF trading volume breaks opening day record according to James Van Straten. So we'll dig into this a bit as well. Thank you so much, Ron, for coming. Let's look at after about 3 hours, we already had $3.5 billion in volume per Eric Balchunas. The 10 fresh, 11 fresh, however you count it, had that massive amount of volume. And if you look at the whole complex, all of the assets, $3.5 billion in total. Well, as usual, I calculate stuff. And here is a brand new spreadsheet that we'll look at a lot, because it's important to track money flows and then back that into actual price. But there's some interesting things, again, behind the scenes. So let's look at the breakdown. So far, this is at the close. I calculated this at 1 p.m. today. I looked at the average price for these different tickers. I looked at the volume and calculated the dollar volume based on the average price. And you can see the big winner was Grayscale. But we don't know if a lot of stuff is moving out of the Grayscale stable into another stable. There's probably definitely going to be some of that as well. The last time I checked as well, the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust discount was 1.6%. It's not quite zero, but getting close. Number 2 in the box is IBIT, the iShares Bitcoin Trust. That's from BlackRock. They had $1 billion in volume. Did they make the 2? I don't know. There might be some over-the-counter stuff happening there too. And number 3 is Fidelity with about $677 million in volume. And then they trickle off real fast. The ARK Bitcoin ETF, 278 million. Bitwise, 122 million. Valkyrie, 8 million, but that means it's not all accounted for, or they didn't have their wiring set up so people could actually buy it from different brokerage accounts. And then Invesco, VanEck, Franklin. I thought Franklin would have been a lot higher. Wisdom Tree, tiny. Hashdex, $4 million. But again, this is probably not everything. Not all the data is in all the systems at the same time. There's big lags in many of the items out there. But a quick bar chart, as we always said, the winner takes most. The winner we knew would be BlackRock. They are the largest AUM manager, money runner, and they got about 30.5% of the action today. But remember, Grayscale's higher, but Grayscale could be a lot of shifting of the sands, people moving out, and Fidelity only 13.6%. But remember, between BlackRock and Fidelity, they have, I think, 15, 16 trillion in assets combined. Massive numbers. And again, it's still early, only the first day. So let's look at the actual price action. This is interesting because iShares actually went up 22.85% today. How is that possible? Well, it's weird because Bitcoin sprang up at the open. I'm watching the price since 3 o'clock this morning, and it did hit that 49,000, but then it came down. But again, we don't know how all of this works. And people always think, well, how do the funds make money if they're only charging 20 bips or 25 basis points on an actual fund? They make it on the trading and on the spreads and on things like this. Okay, Bitcoin is technically flat over the last 24 hours. Flat. But according to their product here, it's up 23%. This is how the money's made, everybody. Changing hands, exchanges. That's why they're very lucrative. And that's why you have companies like Binance making fortunes of money. Now, there's other stuff happening behind the scenes because you have all the money flowing in. And how do they get the Bitcoin? And when do they get the Bitcoin? That is the tricky part. Crypto AI, thank you for coming. This is the Coinbase over-the-counter day. According to CryptoQuant, Coinbase's Bitcoin over-the-counter trading volume reached 7.7 billion today. And this is the highest level in history that I know of. This means that the purchase of Bitcoin through OTC transactions are most probably related to the passage of the spot Bitcoin ETF. And crypto exchange Bitcoin daily trading volume, again, as I mentioned, 160 million, massive. And per just Bitcoin only, it was over $55 billion. And that is the highest level since March 2021. So all of this over-the-counter stuff is probably being handed to the players like BlackRock, Fidelity, etc., to exchange shares for actual spot Bitcoin. That's why this is so big. How it all shakes out behind the scenes, that's what they're doing now after the market close. That's why many believe when they look at the books and look at the prices and look at how much they sold, then the demand for Bitcoin will begin. This is from Marty Party, a great follow on Twitter, and he said it very eloquently. I'll kind of break it down. But basically, daily settlement, the spot Bitcoin ETFs in the United States will settle their value after the US market closes at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every day. It's about an hour ago. This means that the actual amount of Bitcoin held by the ETF will be determined at that time. And rebalancing has to happen. So ETF issuers like BlackRock with their iShares Bitcoin Trust will need to adjust their holdings to match the market's value if necessary. And the price impact of this means that if there is a pre-market jump in the IBIT share price, which there was today about 23%, the price of Bitcoin might reach around $58,000, hypothetically. But shortly after the market closes, this is because the ETF rebalancing could potentially drive up demand for Bitcoin in the afternoon to match the adjusted ETF value. So we're not sure how this is all going to shake out. This is going to be very tricky. But this is how the money is made behind these curtains after hours. And the ETFs use third-party companies to calculate Bitcoin price by averaging across multiple global exchanges at 4 p.m. Okay? Think about that. Notice, coincidentally, the price is kind of the lowest of the day almost at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Coincidence? No. It's how market makers work, everybody. So we'll watch it very carefully. But I think when they start going through all of the numbers and saying, okay, guys, we sold a lot more Bitcoin than we actually have, we need to get more. Let's get on to the OTC desk at Coinbase and kick us over another 50,000 Bitcoin, please, because we have nothing left on our shelves. And it's kind of ridiculous when you see it all like this, but that's how it works. Now, don't be fearful. Over time, it'll get steady. This is the first day. This is going to be massive imbalances all over the place. But what's really important is the scarcity. And let's dig into this little supply crunch information from Econometrics. This is a beautiful chart. It talks about Bitcoin liquidity index. And this chart basically shows the amount of liquidity in the Bitcoin market over time. And liquidity, remember, is a measure of how easily an asset can be bought or sold without affecting price. Now, I will talk about a small little asset later and how a big buy can drive things bonkers. So be careful with microcaps, but it can still also happen with Bitcoin, especially with the influx of money coming in right now. That's why we had a spike to $49,000 today. But getting back to this chart here, you'll see there's a growing number of Bitcoins that are held in cold storage. They're off exchanges. People are hodling until it hits $1 million, or maybe for the next 20 years, etc. The kind of schmuck insurance, as Shamath calls it. But this reduces the number of Bitcoins that are available for trading, which is making the market less liquid over time. And you can see here, this is bullish for Bitcoin because there's less supply, which means if there is a spike in demand, the price will go up. That's it. Also, if you look at the chart, you can see the dramatic effect of liquidity over time. The liquidity of Bitcoin has been decreasing over time fast because there's a growing number of Bitcoin being held in cold storage. And this is such an important point as well for everybody to understand, because as Bitcoin gets held in ETFs and gets held in your cold storage wallets or private wallets, whatever you want to call them, there's going to be less out there. And then we have a halving coming, cutting the new supply in half. And along the way, it's going to get harder and harder and harder. And it's just the genius of Satoshi to put this thing together. So there's a lot of people today, they were excited. Price went to 49,000. And then they saw the miners fall and MicroStrategy fall. And they all got very upset and sad and said, what's going on? How is this even possible? Don't worry. It'll all float again. Just give it time. So let's talk about another supply crunch here. Again, James Van Straten, the percent of Bitcoin supply held on exchanges addresses is now 12%. Good luck. So that's not very much Bitcoin when you consider the hundreds of billions of dollars that are coming into this space. You can buy it up like that. Another view of this is from Glassnode of the 12% of the exchange balance percentage. Here it is ridiculous, and it's not very much at all. I added a big red arrow to point to 12% and a red line to show you that parallel on the yellow, which is the exchange balance of Bitcoin, which is not much, and it's going to become less and less over time. It's hard as can be, which is good. Now there's other stuff happening out there in the market too. You have big money runners, money managers called like Vanguard, and shout out to Sanjay. He was in his account today trying to buy some spot ETFs, and he couldn't, so he bought a thing called WIF instead. But we'll talk more about that later. That's a crazy story. But trade cannot be completed by orders and not accepted for this security. What's going on? Yeah, restrictions. So now there's a huge revolt. And by the way, it's not very hard to transfer your account. If you have a 401k or a retirement account with Vanguard, you can pop it over to Fidelity or another player very quickly. In fact, Robinhood also has their arms wide open and lots of cool things. But this is from Bitcoin Archive. Vanguard refuses to offer Bitcoin because Bitcoin does not align with their philosophies. Close your account. That's from Bitcoin Archive. You know what doesn't align with my philosophy is Vanguard. So go pound sand. And how somebody who's supposed to give you access to markets can deny you access to markets. If you have such an exchange, they are infringing on your freedom. Bounce. Okay? Financial advice right there. Sorry. One of those days, long day. And this is very funny. From the Byzantine General on Twitter, there was a lot of people complaining. I think Interactive Brokers and a whole bunch of other players, they couldn't actually buy or sell on the first trading day. I'm not sure exactly what went on, but this is kind of a joke, is, blow up FTX, tell the plebs crypto is dead, buy up all the Bitcoins, announce an ETF, pump everything, sell it all on the first trading day, and remove the buy button. Thanks for playing, kids. I thought that was funny. It's not exactly what happened, but sometimes people can feel that way. It's just a weird situation. A lot of people are still very apprehensive about the big Wall Street players coming into the Bitcoin space. A lot of maxis don't like it, but as far as I'm concerned, the more money, the better the price action is going to be. And that's what we care about on the channel. We care about alpha, nothing else. And of course, the well-being of humans and animals. Now, getting back to fee wars, is the update from today. You can see here the fees will be 0 for Bitwise and ARK and Invesco up to, I think, the first 6 months or a certain period of time or whatever. And BlackRock have reduced theirs to 20 basis points. And then once they get to, I think it's $5 billion, it'll go up to 30 basis points or something. And then Van Eck, etc. All the fees have come down with the exception of Grayscale. And that's at 1.5%. Far, far higher than anything else. So therefore, I believe those that are in tax-free accounts and can flip very quickly. If you're in Fidelity, you can go from the GBTC product, which is at a still 2% discount. Hopefully that'll disappear real soon, and flip over to even the Fidelity product, which will be available in your Fidelity account. Anyhow, back to more news. We're beginning to learn stuff that happened behind the scenes that we weren't actually aware of, which is super interesting to know how the powers that be actually operate. So the SEC actually did not want to approve the spot ETF at all. And thank goodness for the legal system of the United States and the courts that denying the spot ETF was basically illegal. So the SEC had their hand forced by the legal system. So the legal system still works. Very happy about that. And this is an interesting, fun thing to see. Shout out to Sanjay for sharing. Again, from another James Seyfarth. What's with all the Jameses these days? But you can see here there was 5 votes. 3 approved. Gensler had to, or else he'd end up back in court again. Hester Pierce approved and Ueda approved. But Crenshaw and the other one I can't quite read there, Lizarraga, did not approve. So there's still a lot of hatred out there for Bitcoin. And speaking of somebody who's probably having a very bad day, meantime, Elizabeth Warren saying, 11? And Gary's like, I did the best I could. And the reason she cares is because she gets paid by TradFi. And TradFi do not like Bitcoin because it's a threat to the whole system. So that's the whole story that you're all very familiar with. Anyway, moving on. More Bitcoin adoption could be on the way because, again, Elon Musk is now open to the idea of using Bitcoin for peer-to-peer payments on Twitter X. That would be absolutely massive for the space. When Elon does something, it tends to disrupt a lot of stuff, including banks. By the way, since I started, Bitcoin's gone up $200. As expected. All the ETF fund managers are going through the books and say, oh, we got orders for all this Bitcoin and we don't have any, so we need to go get some. Hook us up, please. So they got to go buy it. Anyway, Bitcoin, despite the day we had and a day in history, thank you so much as well, Emily and Berkeley, hope I read that right. But Bitcoin did have an okay day. At one stage, a very good day, up 3%, and then it fell off. But if you look at all the other cryptos, they did really well. ETH up 6%, Solana up 5.8%, Cardano, Avalanche, dark green, near dark green, Ethereum Classic even is running with Ethereum because that's what sometimes happens. Everything is green with the exception of Leo, Injective. I own Injective, by the way, and Lido. By the way, Lido has been on a complete rampage, and that's what happens. When things run, they take a breather and come back down to earth and let the rest of the market catch up. So that's completely normal. Let's look at Ethereum. Ethereum did break layer 3 on the ATR, and they're at a 20-month high. So this is a big spike that happened all of a sudden. Again, part of it as well happened because the market is excited. Whoa, now we've got a Bitcoin ETF. Next in the box is an Ethereum ETF. So a lot of people actually still believe is going to be approved in the next 3 months. I don't see that happening myself. You still have Gary Gensler saying, well, it's not a security, therefore it doesn't belong in the SEC. It goes over to the CFTC, needs to be handled differently. But then you say Bitcoin's a commodity, but still managed by the SEC. So the level of confusion still within the SEC it actually makes my brain hurt because I can't deal with it. Anyway, speaking of Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin believes they should have a modest gas fee increase. And he said, I think that doing a modest gas limit increase is reasonable. And I think it was at the team's 11th AMA. And Buterin made some brief calculations saying this would imply an increase of around 40 million. And the current gas limit is 30 million, according to Etherscan. So Buterin suggests an increase of 33%. So we'll watch this space carefully. But fees are not solved on Ethereum. This could make them a lot worse too. This is yesterday. Some Ethereum gas prices when the network is busy as high as 0.14 ETH. So you could be spending over $330 to move $10 or less. So it is still very, very expensive. And there's no way there's a path to 1 billion users with that type of fee structure. Anyhow, in other news too, I did mention Sanjay earlier because he couldn't buy I shouldn't even mention the name because I don't want anybody to buy it. This is a meme coin, but there's a message, a learning lesson behind the scenes here that I want people to learn. And this is, I was looking at the deck screener last night and I saw this asset doing a ton of volume, absolute ton of volume. And I was like, what is this WIF thing? I kind of heard about it. It means DogWifHate or something. And what's really interesting is there was a huge amount of slippage because a big whale, apparently a Binance whale or unlucky trader, somebody came in and bought $9 million worth of this WIF thing. It's a viral meme coin. And they executed in 3 transactions, I think, one for about 6.25 million, one for about 2 million, one for about 1 million. And the move ended the trader with slippage loss of nearly 6 million. So they spend 9, lose 6 in slippage to get just $3 million worth of gear. So now they got to find a way to pump it to get their money back. So anyway, don't play with these things. But this goes back to the whole thing of, liquidity and how a large amount of money can drive things crazy and how people can actually get lost. And that's why we saw some of the mess today with Bitcoin going to 49K, etc. So be careful with low liquidity cryptocurrencies out there because you can get smoked real fast and lose $6 million. This is, I think, the Binance insider screw up from Look on Chain and the details and the transactions if you want to dig into that and find out what happened. But, when you don't have your slippage dialed in, you can get toasted real fast. In other news as well, a historic moment as well, Microsoft is now bigger than Apple in terms of market cap. It's been a long time since this was there, and this is from Financial Times, and you can see Microsoft have found a way to monetize AI, hence the big increase in results, and the fact that I've been saying for a long time, Apple's growth has just stopped for the last few years, and stock market rewards growth when they can see it. Sometimes they actually can't see it. In addition, the little bit of inflation news real quick, and I'll get back to Tesla, but the CPI did rise 0.3% in December, higher than expected, pushing the annual rate to 3.4%. Again, the Fed will tell you they control interest rates and everything else. They don't. They're still looking for this magical unicorn 2%. Will they ever get there? I'm not sure. But when you look at inflation in America, and it's a lot worse in other countries too, so you can run the same chart yourself. Thank you, Super Soul Man. These are the actual increases in costs over the last 36 months. The fuel up 54%, gasoline 46%, etc., etc. Everything, eating at home, rent, medical, shelter, blah, 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 wages, secondhand cars. Everything is up and high, and when you hear the government saying, oh, we've beaten inflation, no, you're still earning a lot less than you were 3 years ago. And potentially, we maybe have not seen anything yet, because exclusive Tesla Berlin just came out on Reuters as well to suspend most production for 2 weeks in Giga Berlin because of the Red Sea supply gap. Huh? What's going on? Well, it's interesting. These guys are bringing the world to its knees, and once again, just like C19, interrupting supply chains. Does anybody have a 50 cal handy? Because I think a 50 cal is better than that gun. I don't know how these little guys in these little boats can literally take down these huge shipping liners. They just need to hire a former Marine or something, stick them on the back of the boat, pay them really well, and just protect themselves from these terrorists that, again, are bringing the world to its knees. And this Tesla's the first car company to say, we are impacted. If they are impacted, I guarantee you, every other car company and every other factory and everybody that's dependent on supply chains is impacted by this too, which is a big deal. Anyway, finally, a little bit of government macro news. Deficits are will be well over 2 trillion in 2024, and the Q1 deficit is already 509 billion, and it's going to get a lot worse, especially as interest payments roll into higher rates. The interest that the US government will spend will be 1.2 trillion on top of all the other money that they are losing. So this is why we Bitcoin, everybody. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to everyone on Patreon. Oh, shout out to a new Patreon member, Julie. You just joined Patreon last Friday. Welcome in. Thank you for joining and already learning a lot. And I've been watching your channel since day one. Well, thank you, Julie, for your loyalty. Glad you're now in the Patreon community, and look forward to chatting with you on the inside. Thank you as well, extra fresh, to the mods in the chat and everybody else. I will check on Bitcoin price, 46.3. It is not spiking in after hours, but hopefully something will happen tonight. It always happens at night as well. Remember, Asia is coming online soon too. So that was day one in Bitcoin, day in history. Overall, don't fret. Things are going to go real well given time, given this hardness of this asset. So hang tough, everybody. See you all tomorrow. Good night.